June 6, 1944. Southern England. Rain lashes sideways across a darkened airfield near Portsmouth. In the distance, the low thunder of engines rolls across the countryside. C-47 transports climbing into the night sky, their silhouettes vanishing into cloud. Inside a canvas operations tent lit by a single shaded bulb, a map of northern France stretches across a wooden table. Pins mark beaches: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, Sword. Lieutenant Colonel Hal Courtney stands rigid at attention. Across from him, helmet liner tilted back, ivory-handled revolvers resting at his hips, stands George S. Patton. He listens to the engines, not the report, not the radio chatter, the engines, because that sound means the invasion has begun, and he is not part of it. Landings confirmed along the Normandy coast, sir, Courtney says carefully. Heavy resistance reported at Omaha. Patton does not answer immediately. Across the channel, young Americans are crouched in landing craft, vomiting into their helmets as naval guns detonate ahead of them. Machine gun fire already rips through the surf. Men drown under the weight of their own packs. But Patton stands in England. Officially, he commands the 1st United States Army Group, FUSAG, a massive formation positioned opposite the Pas de Calais. On paper, it is the most powerful striking force in Britain. In reality, it does not exist. Inflatable Sherman tanks dot the fields of Kent. Wooden aircraft silhouettes sit beside runways. Dummy landing craft line the Thames estuary. Radio operators transmit endless fake traffic, creating the illusion of movement. German reconnaissance aircraft photograph it all. Berlin believes it. In East Prussia, at the Wolf's Lair, staff officers huddle over situation maps. Normandy is discussed, but cautiously. Adolf Hitler had long insisted the decisive invasion would come at Calais. It is the shortest crossing, the most logical, and Patton, the aggressive, unpredictable American, commands the army facing it. Even now, as reports from Normandy flood in, panzer reserves remain held back, because they are waiting for Patton. Back inside the tent, Courtney lowers his voice. Sir, if the Germans believe Calais is still the objective, they'll keep their armored divisions north. Patton nods once. They will, he says. He moves a gloved finger across the map, not toward Calais, toward Brittany, toward the open plains of France. He taps the paper once. When this line breaks, he says quietly, we don't push. He looks up, eyes hard. We run. For weeks before D-Day, Patton had trained his Third Army with an obsession bordering on fury. He had not forgotten Sicily, the slapping incident, the reprimand, the quiet sidelining by Dwight D. Eisenhower. He had been removed from operational command, forced to wait, forced to play a phantom general in a phantom army. But waiting, to Patton, was not inactivity. It was preparation. Tank crews drilled rapid column movement along narrow English roads. Mechanics practiced engine swaps under blackout conditions. Quartermasters rehearsed fuel distribution calculations down to the gallon. Patton believed something most commanders did not fully grasp. The battle for France would not be decided on the beaches. It would be decided in the first 72 hours after the line broke. Speed, he told his officers, is a weapon, and weapons must be used ruthlessly. June 7th, Normandy. The beachhead is chaos. At Omaha, bodies still float in the surf. Units are mixed, radios malfunction. German artillery fires from concealed positions inland. The bocage country beyond the beaches is worse than anyone predicted. Thick hedgerows rising like earthen walls, each one a fortress. American infantry advance yard by yard, cutting through tangled brush under sniper fire. In Tain, British forces face stiff resistance from the 12th SS Panzer Division. German counterattacks are sharp and coordinated. This is not collapse. This is resistance. In western France, elements of the 2nd SS Panzer Division, Das Reich, begin moving north. Panzer Lehr Division holds ready near Caen. If committed decisively, they could drive the Allies back into the sea. German command hesitates because they are still watching Calais, still waiting for Patton. July 17, 1944. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel is severely wounded when his staff car is strafed by Allied aircraft. German defensive cohesion suffers. 3 days later, an assassination attempt shakes Berlin. Suspicion spreads. Authority centralizes further under Hitler. Decision-making slows. In England, Patton receives confirmation. Third Army will land once the beachhead expands. He walks alone that evening across a muddy field lined with silent Sherman tanks. Engines are covered. Crews sleep nearby in damp tents. The machines sit motionless, 75mm guns angled slightly upward, like hunting dogs held on a leash. Patton stops beside one tank and places a hand on its cold armor. "You're going to see France," he murmurs. He looks south toward the unseen coast. The Germans believe Normandy is the battle. They believe it will stall. They believe the Allies lack the speed to exploit a breakthrough. Patton believes something else entirely. He believes that once American armor reaches open country, the German army will not be fighting a line. It will be fighting momentum. And momentum, once unleashed, does not ask permission. In the darkness, a mechanic somewhere pulls a starter lever. An engine coughs once, then roars to life. The sound rolls across the English countryside like distant artillery. Across the channel, the hedgerow fighting grinds on. But Patton is not thinking about hedgerows. He is thinking about highways. And when Third Army lands in France, the German High Command will discover something they have not faced since 1940, an enemy that moves faster than they do. July 25, 1944, 09:38 hours, near Saint-Lô, Normandy. The sky is not blue, it is metal. Hundreds of American heavy bombers, B-17 Flying Fortresses, and B-24 Liberators move in rigid formation above a low cloud ceiling. Their engines merge into a single mechanical roar that drowns out everything beneath them. Private First Class Raymond Collins of the 30th Infantry Division presses his helmet into the dirt. Then the bombs fall. The earth does not shake. It lifts. Entire hedgerows, those green, suffocating walls that have trapped the Allies for 7 weeks, erupt into fountains of soil and smoke. German strongpoints vanish under sheets of flame. The elite Panzer Lehr Division, positioned directly in the path of the assault, is smashed by thousands of tons of high explosive. Operation Cobra has begun, but not all the bombs land where they are meant to. Several waves fall short. American troops scream warnings too late. Explosions tear into friendly lines. Dust blinds everyone. Radios choke with static and confusion. For a moment, a long, sickening moment, it appears the assault may collapse before it begins. Lieutenant General Omar Bradley watches from a forward observation point, jaw clenched. He had nearly postponed the attack because of weather. Now he sees friendly casualties mount under American bombs. He does not call it off. He cannot, because if Cobra fails, Normandy becomes a graveyard of attrition. The bombardment finally lifts. Silence hangs for 3 seconds. Then American armor surges forward. The hedgerow line cracks, not everywhere, not cleanly, but enough. Sherman tanks fitted with improvised steel rhino cutters punch through earthen embankments instead of climbing over them. Infantry follow tight behind. German survivors, stunned and disorganized, attempt to regroup. But the front is no longer a straight line. It is torn. Panzer Lehr Division, once considered among Germany's finest, has been gutted. Communications are fragmented. Units fall back in confusion. For the first time since June 6th, open ground lies ahead. August 1st, 1944, 01 hours. Normandy. Third Army is activated. In a dim command post lit by field lamps, George S. Patton signs the order with deliberate calm. He steps outside. Columns are already forming. Sherman tanks idle in long rows, exhaust fumes drifting into the humid night air. Half-tracks loaded with infantry rumble forward. Artillery tractors grind into motion. Military police attempt to control the traffic flow and fail. Patton climbs into a jeep and drives straight toward the congestion. He does not tolerate delay. Standing in the middle of a narrow Norman road, boots planted in dust, he directs vehicles himself, waving tanks forward, shouting at drivers to close gaps, forcing stalled units aside. "Keep them moving," he snaps. He points east. "Drive them. Don't stop unless you're dead." The columns begin to flow, and once they start, they do not slow. Avranches becomes the hinge, a narrow corridor near the coast, vulnerable, exposed. If German forces sever it, the breakout dies in a pocket of its own making. German command understands this. On August 7th, they strike. Operation Littich. Under direct orders from Adolf Hitler, armored units attack west toward Mortain, aiming to cut off the American spearhead. In the early hours, German tanks achieve surprise. Some American units are thrown into chaos. Communications falter. For a few hours it appears the corridor may close. But dawn comes, and with it, the sky changes sides. P-47 Thunderbolts descend in waves, engines screaming low over the fields. Rockets streak into German armor. 500-pound bombs detonate among tightly packed columns. Smoke rises in black pillars visible for miles. German tanks burn where they stand. The counterattack stalls. It is their last real opportunity to contain the breakout, and it fails. Now the map transforms daily. American armored divisions do not consolidate methodically. They bypass. They pivot. The 4th Armored Division swings toward Le Mans. The 6th Armor drives south, then east. Infantry ride on tank hulls, boots dangling over steel sides as the countryside blurs past. 40 miles in a day. 50, sometimes more. German commanders attempt to establish defensive lines along rivers and road junctions, but American columns are already behind them. This is not the methodical, grinding advance the Germans prepared for. This is maneuver warfare, fluid, relentless. For 4 years, the Wehrmacht had perfected blitzkrieg. Now, for the first time in France, they are on the receiving end of something eerily similar. In Berlin, situation reports become increasingly desperate. Arrows drawn in red ink stretch across central France. Entire formations are reported missing. Communications between corps headquarters disintegrate under pressure. German command had believed Normandy would be the decisive battlefield, a static contest, a defensive struggle that would bleed the Allies dry. They did not anticipate what would happen once the hedgerows were breached. They did not anticipate Patton unleashed. August 10th. Patton stands beside a roadside ditch, binoculars raised, watching his columns roll east. Dust coats his boots. Sweat runs beneath his collar. He knows the Germans are attempting to regroup somewhere ahead. He knows they are trying to form a defensive pocket around retreating units. He intends to close that pocket before it solidifies. He lowers the binoculars. "Keep pushing," he says quietly, "because this is no longer a battle for hedgerows. This is a race across France. And somewhere ahead, near a place called Falaise, thousands of German soldiers are beginning to realize they are not retreating to a new line. They are retreating into a trap." August 14th, 1944, 18:20 hours, near Argentan, France. The air is thick with dust and the metallic scent of burning fuel. Staff Sergeant William Hargrove of the U.S. 2nd Armored Division stands beside his Sherman, boots sinking into churned earth, listening to a distant, continuous rumble. It is not a single barrage. It is movement. Through binoculars, he sees it. Columns stretching along narrow country roads to the north. Trucks, half-tracks, horse-drawn wagons, tanks with hastily repainted markings, infantry limping beside vehicles running on fumes. The German army is not advancing. It is trying to escape. Since the breakout at Avranches, American forces have driven deep into France. British and Canadian armies push south from Sanne. Polish armored units fight toward Chambord. From the south, Patton's Third Army swings east and then north. Between them, the space narrows daily. Falaise, Argentan, Trun, Chambord. A pocket is forming. Inside it, elements of Germany's 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army, tens of thousands of men who had expected Normandy to become a defensive stalemate. They did not expect to be hunted. In Berlin, situation reports shift tone. Normandy is no longer described as a contained front. It is described as fluid. Staff officers attempt to redraw defensive lines along rivers and crossroads, but each new line exists only briefly before Allied armor appears beyond it. For years, the Wehrmacht had mastered operational maneuver. Poland, France, the early months in Russia. Now, for the first time on French soil since 1940, they are on the receiving end of it. This is not attrition. This is collapse in motion. And it is precisely the kind of war George S. Patton had been waiting to fight. August 13th, Argentan. American advance elements reach the town and push northward. Patrols report light resistance ahead. The gap between American forces and the Canadians driving south shrinks to barely 12 miles. Patton studies the map in his forward command jeep. He sees it instantly. Drive north. Close the jaws. Annihilate the German armies west of the Seine. He turns to an aide. "We can bottle them," he says, but higher command hesitates. General Dwight D. Eisenhower and other Allied leaders fear overextension. There are concerns about units colliding in confusion, about friendly fire between converging forces. Orders are issued. Third Army is to halt its northward push at Argentan. Patton receives the directive in silence. He folds the message slowly. "They're getting away," he mutters, not in anger, in calculation, because he knows what this pocket represents. It is not merely a battlefield victory. It is proof that once the hedgerow line broke, the German army could not stabilize. The war they had prepared for, static, defensive, methodical, ended in Normandy. The war Patton intended, fast, ruthless, relentless, has begun. August 18th. The Falaise Corridor. The sky is gray with smoke. Hargrove watches as German columns attempt to force their way east through a narrowing strip of open ground. Allied artillery fires from both flanks. Shells detonate among tightly packed vehicles. Horses scream. Trucks jackknife into ditches. Panzer crews abandon damaged tanks and run. Above them, P-47 Thunderbolts descend low, rockets slamming into the trapped convoys. Bombs burst along the road, scattering metal and bodies alike. The corridor becomes known by those who survive it as the Corridor of Death. By the time the pocket finally seals near Chambois on August 21st, the destruction is staggering. An estimated 40 to 50,000 German soldiers are captured. Thousands more lie dead or wounded. Hundreds of tanks, guns, and vehicles are destroyed or abandoned, clogging roads in twisted heaps of steel. The German 7th Army is shattered. Patton visits the battlefield days later. His jeep rolls slowly past burned-out armor and long columns of prisoners marching west under guard. The stench lingers in the late summer heat. He removes his helmet briefly and surveys the wreckage. "This," he says quietly to a staff officer gesturing toward the debris-choked fields, "is what happens when you let an army run." There is no triumph in his tone, only assessment, because even now his mind is already beyond Falaise. To the east, the Seine River awaits. German units that escape the pocket do so without cohesion. They retreat in fragments, stripped of heavy equipment, attempting to regroup along the river line. But regrouping requires time, and Patton does not intend to give them any. For weeks after D-Day, German high command believed Normandy would stall the invasion. They believed they could bleed the Allies slowly. Instead, within 10 weeks, their Western armies have been smashed in open maneuver, exactly the kind of war they once dominated. The real war, the mobile war, the war of speed and encirclement, has arrived in France and is being dictated by American armor. Patton stands beside the road, watching his columns move east in unbroken lines of dust and steel. Paris lies ahead, the German border beyond that, and further still, the Rhine. He lowers his binoculars. "Keep pushing," he says, because the trap at Falaise was not the end, it was the warning. August 25th, 1944 hours. Southern edge of Paris. Church bells are ringing. Captain Robert Young of the U.S. 4th Armored Division stands in his turret as civilians flood the boulevards, waving French tricolor flags and climbing onto passing American tanks. Women press flowers into soldiers' hands. Men shout, "Vive l'Amérique!" Gunfire still echoes in pockets of resistance across the city, but the German occupation of Paris is collapsing. Young barely notices the celebration. His driver looks up from the dashboard. "Sir, we're almost dry." The fuel gauge trembles just above empty. Paris is liberation, but for George S. Patton, it is also delay. He understands the symbolic power of the city. He knows the political importance to General Charles de Gaulle and to Allied unity, but he also knows something colder. Cities slow armies. Crowds choke roads. Ceremony costs time, and time allows the enemy to regroup. While the world celebrates Paris, Patton studies a map already turned east, beyond the Seine, beyond the cheering crowds, toward the German frontier. Within days, Third Army surges across the Seine at multiple crossings. Engineers work under intermittent artillery fire to secure bridges before German demolition charges can destroy them. Infantry sweep riverbanks. Sherman tanks clatter across steel spans still vibrating from recent explosions. German units retreat in fragments, but they are retreating towards something stronger. Lorraine. September 3rd, 1944. Approaching Metz. The countryside changes. Rolling farmland gives way to fortified towns and defensive ridgelines. The weather shifts. Rain begins to fall in steady, cold sheets, turning roads into rivers of mud. Captain Young feels the difference immediately. The easy miles are over. German resistance stiffens near the Moselle River. Artillery fire becomes more deliberate. Machine gun nests are better positioned. The remnants of panzer divisions, reinforced by fresh units pulled from Germany, begin forming cohesive defensive lines. Metz is not an open road. It is a fortress. Concrete bunkers from the old French Maginot Line now serve German defenders. Interlocking fields of fire cover bridges and river crossings. Every approach is observed. Patton orders probing attacks. Progress slows. For the first time since the breakout, Third Army is not racing. It is grinding, and fuel remains scarce. The Red Ball Express strains beyond capacity. Thousands of trucks haul gasoline from Normandy beaches across hundreds of miles of dusty roads, but demand outpaces supply. Tank crews wait beside silent Shermans for fuel deliveries that arrive hours, sometimes days late. An army built on speed now measures advance in rationed miles. Patton despises the pause. He had shattered German formations across France in weeks. He had reached the edge of the Reich. And now he is constrained not by enemy strength, but by supply. He turns to an aide during a briefing near Verdun. "How much fuel?" "Enough for limited operations, sir." Patton nods once. Limited operations. To him, those words are intolerable. In Berlin, reports grow more urgent. Normandy did not stall the Allies. Falaise did not stabilize the line. The sign did not hold. Now American forces stand at Germany's western doorstep. German high command begins reinforcing the West Wall, the Siegfried Line, a series of bunkers, dragon's teeth anti-tank obstacles, and fortified strongpoints stretching along the frontier. The war has shifted. It is no longer about containing an invasion. It is about defending the homeland. The very scenario Patton had predicted in June, that once the breakout occurred, the true struggle would begin, is now undeniable. The easy defensive narrative is gone. The real war has arrived at Germany's gates, September 7th, ridge overlooking Lorraine. Patton stands beneath a gray sky, wind tugging at his field jacket. In the distance, artillery flashes flicker across the horizon near Metz. Rain darkens the soil under his boots. He raises binoculars and studies the terrain. Beyond those hills lies the German border. Beyond that, the Siegfried Line. And beyond that, the Rhine. He lowers the glasses slowly. The breakout across France was momentum. What lies ahead is resistance. Inside Germany, there will be no retreating columns, no collapsing corridors, no fleeing armies caught in open fields. There will be dug-in defenders fighting for their own soil. Patton turns back toward his staff. "We're not finished," he says quietly. D-Day was the opening. Normandy was the breach. Falaise was the warning. But the real war, the war that will decide Germany's fate, waits beyond those hills. And Patton intends to drive straight into it.